accusation?
You know, Wolf, there are mixed views from my friends across government. Most of the people I speak with are transitioning from seeing this as the President of the United States to seeing this man as a circus clown. Let me be clear. If he's either alleging that the FBI and the Department of Justice conspired with another branch of government, that is the judiciary, the FISA court, that's a special secret court, would have to approve this wiretapping in a huge conspiracy to tap members of the president's party. That's crazy, Wolf. Secondly, if that's not correct, he's alleging that the former president conducted a felonious violation of federal law that exceeds what we saw in Watergate without a single fact to support it. The conversation, Wolf, has to transition to how do we understand what the President of the United States says to understanding that these are circus clown remarks. We have an Iran nuclear deal that he said would tear up. We don't talk about it. We have Russian intervention in an election that my friends think is of serious concern, not for what happened in 2016, but for what happens in 2020. How do we talk about that? We have North Korean launches of potentially nuclear missiles. And what does the President of the United States do? He launches a smokescreen because he's afraid to answer questions about Russian interference in election and Russian contacts with the members of his party. And the smokescreen is a lie that says there is a massive conspiracy involving the judiciary, the FISA court, the Department of Justice, and the FBI. The man is delusional, Wolf, and the conversation has to transition from how do we explain what the commander-in-chief is doing to how do we understand the acts of a man who doesn't understand the difference between protecting his brand and protecting the country. I've not ever seen anything like this, Wolf.
You know, Jeffrey, strong words from Phil Mudd, but the president, the White House now says they want the House and Senate Intelligence Committees to investigate and clarify exactly what happened. But the president has the authority himself. He could clarify it within the next couple hours. He could declassify whatever sensitive information he wants and release the evidence, if there is evidence, backing up his assertion.
Well, he certainly could. I mean, one of the clear federal laws is that the President of the United States has the immediate authority to declassify anything at any time, and he could certainly do that. But I have to say, you know, this idea that you throw out what appears to be a false statement and then say, well, there should be an investigation. I mean, you know, why should there be an investigation if there's no basis for the underlying assertion?
But if he has the evidence, as he says he does, why doesn't he release it?
Well, that's a separate issue. Of course he should do that. But then to make this false statement and then say, well, Congress should investigate this statement, I mean, I think that's, you know, I mean, that gives the president too much credit. I think Congress should only investigate things that have actual bases, not just stuff that comes from scrolling the Internet at 6 in the morning.
6:30 to be precise. Let's talk, Lori, about Sean Spicer today at his briefing. He said there's no question something happened with the wiretapping. It's an extraordinary claim, but at some point they got to back it up with some facts. Are they painting themselves in a corner?
That's like the famous Donald Trump that goes, people are saying something happened. Okay, so perhaps the Russian ambassador was wiretapped, as we know, because of General Flynn. But I think in an odd way, this is going to backfire on Donald Trump, and I'll tell you why. It's going to backfire on him because it adds more fuel to the fire of people who are saying, okay, let's appoint an independent counsel. Let's make sure that all of this gets investigated. I understand what Jeffrey is saying, that if nothing happened, why investigate it? But perhaps the president himself is now, you know, letting people who say, okay, we need something more than just a congressional investigation, because if the president's claims are true, then there is really something rotten in Denmark, and that perhaps that needs to be investigated. If you take the president at his word that he knows more than we do, yes, he can disclose it, as you point out, but he's clearly choosing not to for whatever reason. Then I think this investigation needs to broaden, and people who say that, you know, might have more reason to say that right now.
David Swerdlick, Sean Spicer at the White House today said the president has not yet spoken with the FBI Director James Comey about this. But don't you think before he makes a serious charge like this against President Obama, he should have consulted with the head of the agency that would be responsible for implementing surveillance at Trump Tower in New York City?
Yeah, of course he should. I mean, this goes to what Gloria and Phil and Jeffrey were all saying, right? He's the president of the United States. It's within his power to ask questions and get answers. Two things about the tweets. To the point you were just making, Gloria, the president in these tweets on Saturday morning didn't do his typical I'm hearing or saying. These tweets were stated as facts, so now he's got to back it up. And then the second thing is that he's tweeting as if he's this aggrieved party with no power, and yet he's the president, he's the leader of the free world. He has every opportunity to declassify to get to the bottom of this if he wants to.
But doesn't Donald Trump have a terrific advantage here in that we give up on the scrutiny of these things after a little while? You know, he said 3 million people voted illegally, and we were all outraged. Oh, there's no evidence. But, you know, the circus moved on, and we stopped looking at it. And now something else is going to happen, and we'll stop paying attention to this false statement by Donald Trump. I mean, I think, you know, he understands the press perhaps better than a lot of his critics do.
Well, you know, I think we do live at the bottom of the food chain in many ways, but you have members of, because we don't have this information. It's not readily available to us. We don't have subpoena power. But you do have people like Lindsey Graham and John McCain just coming out today and saying, look, this needs to be investigated because if what he is saying is true, it's dangerous. And if he is saying this without any proof, it's also dangerous.
Yeah, the president said it was a fact. He said it was a fact that President Obama was tapping my phones in October. That was one of his